All right, so good morning, guys. I am so excited to talk with you a second week on Give, Serve, Love. Uh, in this, you know, this thing called love. We're all trying to figure it out. The Beatles, they sang about it, and I agree with the Beatles on the point that all we need is love, because I really believe that. But the kind of love is really what we got to define, because everyone's got their own definition of what love looks like, and I think we need to look at the best version, and frankly, the author, the architect of love, the person that created love, which is God. And we're in our third year now of Give, Serve, Love as a church, participating with this nationwide, even worldwide group of churches that set aside a couple weeks every single year to initiate a brand new season of giving. But the season continues all 12 months. It's just our way of saying we're going to renew our commitments, kind of like people do on New Year's Eve for New Year's Day, the resolutions. This is our New Year resolution. What we started in the fall of, we're going to make brand new commitments for serving and for loving our community, our charities, our organizations that are all around us. And last week we kicked it off with serving, talk about what it looks like to serve. And we talked about a lot of organizations that are worthy, or well, one in particular organization that's very worthy, and that is the Saginaw City Rescue Mission. That's one of the places that we uh, choose to serve and choose to partner with, that are doing a phenomenal job. But the reason that Give, Serve, Love is such a big deal to us around here is really it comes down to this idea of love and what the definition of love really is, because love is the answer, but it's the agape kind of love that we're talking about. We talked about this last week, but I want to review it. Agape love is goodwill, benevolence, and sacrificial toward others. You know when you feel agape love compared to someone else saying, I love you, and they're just empty words. But when you feel agape love, you're like, oh, I feel loved. It's typically when a person experiences this from another person, they say, I think I found the one. I think I finally found the one. I think this is what it's all about. I'm in love. You'll jump on couches like Tom Cruise. You'll do crazy things because you want the world to know you've experienced this. It's different. It's different. So we know what different looks like. But what we don't always remember or realize is where that different comes from. It comes from God. God is the one who has first shown this love to us and wants us to experience it, but also to live it and to show it, because that's what it's about. It's about toward others. It's not about, oh, I want this love, so I'll give some to you, but you give back to me. No, it's about, I want to give to you, and that's all it's about. And then when it comes back, you're just like, okay, I didn't expect that. That feels good, but I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm not doing it because I want something in return. I'm showing this love. I'm doing this for you with no strings attached. I'm so excited about how yesterday went. Our church was at the biggest truck or treat event in mid-Michigan. No, nothing bigger around, I'm telling you, at the Birch Run racetrack. It was incredible. There was between 1,000 and 2,000 people there. We gave away 1,300 full-size candy bars to kids. This year, now, in years past, we'd always kind of said, oh, parents, take a couple, kid, take a couple, but we ran out. So this year, we were more vigilant on, okay, kids, you can pick one, but, we didn't say no to parents necessarily, but we didn't offer them, is what I'm saying. And we actually had enough to make the whole way through. We didn't run out, just so happy. But we gave away 1,300 candy bars, and that's amazing. It was amazing that our church did this without asking anything in return. I know there were some businesses or organizations that were out there that were like, okay, here's something we're going to give you, but here, let me give you something else to, sign up for. Do you need funeral services, or do you need something for your pets, or whatever it might have been? They wanted something in return from you. You sign up here for the raffle or whatever. They've got your phone number and your information, whatever it might have been. But our church wasn't doing any of that. Our church was just, parents even said, wow, full-size candy bars. Do we pay for these? And we're like, no, don't pay for them. What? Kids, I can tell you, child after child, they're walking up and all of a sudden their eyes go, it's like they walked into Willy Wonka. Look at a table full of full-size candy bars. Really? I can pick whatever I want? Yeah, pick whatever you want. Kids were excited and blown away, and parents were blown away at the generosity that we showed to them. I'm so proud of our church because that's what agape love is. That's what it's about. But what would it look like if the whole world did that? You know, some people would be excited to hear me say, what would it be like if Halloween was every day of the year? They'd be like, what? That's probably not a good example. What if Christmas was every day of the year? What would it be like? Because imagine, because I don't know about you, but people that I am related to, people that I am close to, we're all a little more generous and giving around Christmas. We all are. And there's something magical about that time. There's something incredible about that time that happens because we're all in the spirit, the attitude of giving to other people. What would it be like if we lived our life showing agape love, not just in monetary money things, but what if we did it in just everyday acts of kindness and showing preference to others? What would it look like? Well, I come across interesting videos and things. I came across an interesting commercial from Thailand. Don't worry, it's got translation words on the screen. But I want you to check this out with me because I really think it illustrates what I'm talking about in a really cool way.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวันเขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลยไม่ได้รวยขึ้นไม่ได้ออกทีวีไม่มีใครรู้จักไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้นเพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิม
What a great illustration of what it means to show that kind of love. And if you didn't catch it, when the little girl and the mother were begging, it showed the caption at the bottom, but it was quick, but it showed that they were asking for money for her to get an education, which is why it meant so much when he saw her in the school uniform. But just through simple acts of kindness at everyday life that you saw there, with no expectation of anything in return. That's what agape love looks like. And one person can make the world a better place by starting right where you live, by starting right in your neighborhood. This is what it looks like when somebody decides to do something about it. Now, last week we talked about examples of how serving illustrates the agape love. When we serve, we show agape love. This week we're going to magnify the word give, because when we give love, it's shared. As simple as that. When we give, love is shared. I give and something happens through my act of giving. A byproduct occurs. When I share what's in my pocket with someone else who doesn't have anything in their pocket or has very little in their pocket, something happens. When we give away something that we earned to someone who we don't even know sometimes, something miraculous happens. And I understand the tension because we worked hard for our money. Money doesn't grow on trees. We've all heard that, right? We all wish you guys would have the tree in your backyard if it did. I know you guys have trees galore, bushes. If it was there, you guys would have it. I know. But there's no such thing as a tree that grows money. You work, you earn. That's a work ethic I learned from my father as a little boy early on. That if you want money, if you want things, you get a job, you go to work, and that's how it works. And the work ethic is incredible. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's why I'm sure that we all wished more in the world had that kind of work ethic and that kind of conviction to understand that that's how things work and that's what you got to do. And it's in the Bible after all. I mean, let's look over here, Proverbs 21:26. This says it very, very clearly. If you want too much and are too lazy to work, it could be fatal. That says it pretty simple. Proverbs is great for these one-line, witty bits of wisdom that sometimes they sting a little sometimes, like, oh, wow, okay, ouch, that hurt. But sometimes they make you laugh because you're like, that's so true. But they're bits of wisdom from a man named Solomon, who at his time was the wealthiest man in the world, had it all, known for his wisdom, people would come to him for advice, and he wrote much of what you see in Proverbs. But sometimes this work ethic causes us to trip. If you're like me, I admit, sometimes I struggle with this idea of, okay, if I know that I've got to work hard for what I'm going to get put in my pocket, then it's mine because I worked for it. I mean, if you don't have something, get a job, work for it. I mean, I know that's, it's like, hey, this isn't magic. I didn't wake up with my pocket. It's because I got a job. I went to work all week. That's how it happened. So there's a part of me that sometimes will look at a person and I'm thinking, well, are you doing your part? We all know you can't just stand still and ask God to grow a crop in your backyard if you haven't taken this time to plant some seeds. It's ridiculous, right? But yet, despite all of that, Jesus comes on to the scene and Jesus says, it doesn't matter. If someone needs something, help them. Don't ask them about their work history. Don't ask them what they did last week. Don't ask them if they've done their part. If someone's in need of something, just help them. And that goes against the work ethic part of our brain that God himself has handed to us and said, hey, I want you to work, and by the sweat of your brow and by the work of your hand, you will prosper. You will get ahead. God put a work ethic in us, so it kind of works against it a little bit. To give the undeserved, who didn't work, it feels like, well, wait a second, it's mine. It's what I worked hard, because I have dreams, I have goals, I have future plans, retirement and things that if you don't work towards it and put it away for it, it's not going to happen. I have family goals, I have personal goals, and I've got to earn, and in order for those goals to happen, I've got to earn it, and I've got to put it away. I've got to save it in a savings account, or I've got to invest in something and let it build. I know that. I'm working on that. So I try to save. I try to invest for my future. I try to get ahead and get the promotions and the raises for careers and jobs to put myself in that position where I can keep climbing that ladder towards that goal. And so it feels conflicting when I'm trying to do all this that I know is important that God has enabled me to do, but at the same time, I've got Jesus over here, and he's saying, give some of it away. It's hard because I am doing the right thing, Lord, but you want me to take some of it out? And I'm just acknowledging that it's a conflict that we all face. This idea of, how much do I keep for me and how much do I give away and what's the right amount? And I don't want to feel guilty if I'm holding on to too much, but I also don't want to be irresponsible and give too much away and then neglect and hurt my family in the process. Where's the balance in it all? So I think it's important that we look to Jesus for the wisdom, because he's the one who has put this upon us, this idea of give without thinking twice. And the next verse that I want to go into is another proverb that I want us to see, but it's the next part of this first one we just started with. And when you see the next part, it kind of helps to bring sense to it. And here's the next verse and what it says. But people who obey God are always generous. So there it is. If you want too much or too lazy to work, it could be fatal. So in other words, there's a balance that we've got to continue to manage. That you've got to work, you've got to take care of your family. But at the same time, if you obey God, you're always generous. So there's this idea of I'm always going to have my mind, I'm always going to have my budget, I'm always going to have my plan, an idea of I take and I give. I take and I give. I take, it's always. It's never I take and I build for myself. Take, build for myself. It's always I take, build for myself, and I give. Take, build for myself, and give. There's this idea that I've got to manage it all together. I mean, we could summarize Jesus' teaching with just one phrase: love others. That was Jesus' message over and over again. Jesus himself gave everything away. Jesus, when he died on the cross, they didn't have a great big estate sale. Think about it. They didn't have to have a reading of the will of what. Why? Because Jesus didn't leave a ton of possessions behind to try to figure out. He wasn't building his own kingdom. He was mission driven the whole time because he was God on earth in a body to show us the way. But it's a balance because God wants us to have the good things. He wants us to have a house. He wants us to take care of our families. But he wants us to never get our focus out of balance, is what it is. It's a balance. And Jesus sets the bar high when it comes to living and giving. I know that. I recognize that. And I know there's been times in my own life where I was asked to give, and I just felt like, in a moment, how can I do this? I feel like I'm already still stretched thin on everything I've got going on. How can I do this? And I hated that feeling. Oh, that feeling was awful. To feel like I had already committed so much of my monthly income to things that like had automatic payments and stuff like that, that the minute it came in, it was gone. I hated that feeling. It was tough because every time there was an opportunity or someone would say I needed something, my immediate answer was, I don't know where I'm going to get it from. I don't feel like I have any extra at all. So I have to admit I've gone through that in my life, but I've also gone through a time in my life where I decided, okay, I need to change that. I need to create margin in my monthly budget where I do have money for emergencies, or I do have money to give away to what God leads in my heart. So be rich is the phrase associated with give, serve, love. And be rich is kind of what I'm leading to here. It's found in 1 Timothy 6:18. This is where this phrase comes from. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and be generous and willing to share. Be rich in good deeds. In other words, when someone says they're rich, it's almost like I'm going to say reservation. It's like a title we give to them, or we kind of say, okay, that's who they are. They're a rich person. Like, I'm sure you've talked to people and say, oh, they're rich. You know, you say certain names, Bill Gates, and you think, oh, he's rich. Oh, yeah. Warren Buffett, you think, oh, he's rich. There's certain names you can say he's rich. You know, even local people around Michigan, you can think of a name and be like, oh, yeah, they're rich. You know, they've got lots of money. You know, the Mott Foundation, you know, that comes from the Mott family. They're rich. You know, that's a local one for us. And we're like, wow, okay. And we put them in like a different category than ourselves. But what this is saying is to be rich. In other words, act as if you've got nothing to lose. Act as if you've got plenty to go around. Act as if I'm going to be okay even if I give away a whole bunch. Because here's the secret. Rich people are scared they could lose it all any second. Rich people don't feel secure because they're rich. Rich people don't feel happy like, oh, it's great. Life's just a bowl of cherries now. I'm finally rich. If you talk to a rich person, they'll always tell you, they'll say, oh, I'm not rich because look at this guy. He's got twice as much as I've got. He's rich. Everybody who's rich will always point to someone else and say, no, no, I'm not rich. They're rich. Like they haven't attained it yet. They haven't reached it yet. We Americans say, we're not rich. But if you go to a third world country and they look at our lives and get a little, like, watch a little video, like a 24 hours a day of our life, their jaws will be on the ground and they'll be like, oh, they're so rich. They go shopping in these stores that have air conditioning. What? You know, they've got carts to push around to put their stuff in to make it easy on them on these nice smooth floors. Really? And there's people paid to just put stuff on shelves so you can just grab what you want when you want to buy it, and you put it in your cart and you walk out and you've got food whenever you want. You just go there and there's refrigerated meats, dairies, cheeses. Just walk to the shelf and pull it off, pay for it, and go home, and it's yours. The world is like, what? You guys are so lucky. You're so rich. It's crazy. But we don't know it because it's our life. It's every day to us. We're like, that's normal. But it's not really normal. It's not. And it's important that we realize that. But when we say be rich, we're saying be rich in what you do. Act as if you've got something to spare. Be generous and willing to share is really what Jesus wants us to understand. Now, it's interesting how we all think about this rich idea of what it means to be rich. And if you've ever heard of filmmakers called He Gets Us, have you ever seen any advertisements? They're called He Gets Us. They're well known for their Super Bowl ad they did. You may have heard about the Super Bowl ad, He Gets Us, that came out this last year. It got a lot of notoriety because some people didn't like what its message was. But they're a group who makes these commercials, and the idea is to remind people that there's a person named Jesus Christ, and He gets us. He understands us. Well, they've put together some good films. There's one they did that I thought fit today so perfectly. They asked people on the street a question. Are you rich? Let's watch this.
So, Jenna, the first question that I have is, would you consider yourself rich?
No.
Why not? What does rich mean?
I would say I'm not rich, but I realize to the majority of the world, I probably am very rich.
Not financially. Not financially.
I feel like that question depends a lot on like the context of it, because I feel like there's a lot of just like different versions of like being rich. But I'd say we're definitely pretty lucky, for sure. And I think I would say that we're rich.
So I grew up in one of the rougher areas of the city that I was born in, very poverty stricken, and even more so being an indigenous person. So you kind of, I would say it feels like you're born to just stay at that level.
I think rich means attaining a certain amount of wealth in which you are fully sustainable by yourself. Independence, for sure.
I kind of struggle a little bit sometimes because our family has a considerable amount of money, and I would always like feel a little insecure about it. Like I would invite people over to my house and I'd be like, wow, like your house is so big. And I would just be like, oh, well, yeah, like, thank you. But it was just like an awkward situation a little bit. And I'm very like grateful to live in a like nice house and like to be able to afford the things that I want. But sometimes I feel like it puts like a gap between me and my friends and the people that I like love to hang around, and just putting a little bit of a barrier there.
I was so wrapped up in the whole money and the wealth aspect for like so long, just the way that I grew up. Like every time like love came, or like just any kind of sense of love, utterly failed. Take my family out the equation, I'm alone.
Yeah, I think for me, the classic line and meaning is Jesus' own words. He said, what shall profit a man who gains the whole world and yet loses his soul? You can have all the money in the world and be the poorest person in the world. in love or in friendship?
My idea of rich as financial richness would be something left over for everybody. Inner richness, nobody can get that to you. You got to keep that yourself. That's why I'm out here fishing. Your inner richness is your peace, you know what I mean? Your peace of mind, so.
Ask me the question again. Now I'm thinking about other varieties of ways of richness.
What does it mean to be rich?
Rich is a wealth of something. I don't think you can receive without giving. It's selfish to almost give back sometimes because it makes you feel good, but that's kind of how I feel good, is by giving back to others. You give because those are the gifts that you have, and those are free. And if you can give that to somebody else, maybe that's wealth.
So why is God so interested in generosity? And the reason is because generosity is love in action. Now pay very attention to what I'm about to say. You can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. You catch that? You can give without loving. I mean, I could give with no love attached to it here. But you cannot love without giving. If I tell my wife I love her so much, but I'm not generous with her, she doesn't feel loved. And I don't really love her. If I tell my son, my kids that I love them, but I'm not willing to share what I have with them and not generous with them, it's not really love that I'm showing, because love gives. God so loved the world that he gave his son. So if I'm not a generous person, I'm not a loving person. That's the simple, flat truth. And it explains a lot. It's why sometimes we feel frustrated when people don't get us. It's just a misunderstanding. Why don't they get and understand? I love them. And you wonder, what's going on? Because I do love them. But maybe look at what your actions have been. Have you shown love to them? It can explain a lot. Because what we feel inside, there's no way to transmit that. But when we give, when we show generosity, it transmits what we feel inside. Now, the Bible talks a lot about generosity, more than any other subject. And here's just an example. The word pray is found in the English translation 371 times in the Bible. The word love, which, let's be honest, love's talked about a lot, 714 times in the Bible. The word give, 2,152 times in the Bible. The word give is spoken more about than any other word. Because God is a giver. God is generous. If he wasn't, we wouldn't have anything right now. And generosity, when we show generosity, we feel closer to God. It draws us closer to God. Matthew 6:21 says it. Your heart will always be where your treasure is. Jesus said that because I become more like Jesus when I give my time or my money away to other people. Jesus was teaching one time in a room full of people who were asking him all kinds of questions. There were Pharisees in the room, other people in the room, but there were people in that room who were not living out generosity. In other words, it was like there were people in the room who said they believed in God, said they, professed to be godly, but Jesus knew that they weren't showing generosity. They were holding in for themselves. In Luke 11:41, here's what Jesus said to them. So clean the inside by giving gifts to the poor, and you'll be clean all over. In other words, people can't see what's on the inside of us. Only God sees what's on the inside of us. But Jesus can. So he said, the way you clean the inside of yourself, the way you refresh, renew the inside, is by giving gifts away, by giving away to others. Now, a parent understands how important this is, because as parents, we begin teaching our kids early on, it's important to share, to be generous, to share your toys with other children. The first time a kid, mine, as a parent, you're like, oh, no, no, don't do that. You're horrified as a parent that your child's going to be in one of those rooms with other kids, and there'll be that child that throws a fit and doesn't share with other kids or takes the other kids' toys or food or snacks. Like, no, we want to teach our kids, Be generous. And what happens when we see it? When we see our child show generosity or show love to another by giving, we're like, oh, our heart melts. We're like, thank you, God. Drop the mic. It's good. I did it. As a parent, you feel so accomplished because you're like, they're getting it. I'm not just telling them to do this. They're getting it. They're doing it for themselves. It feels so good when you see our kids show that generosity. And I think, especially this time of year, a great example I could think of for this personally is Halloween. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've always taken my kids trick-or-treating on Halloween. It's just something that I did as a kid, and I want my kids to enjoy that fun, the excitement of filling a pillowcase is typically what I use, filling a pillowcase with candy by going around the neighborhood and getting free stuff. I mean, it's so fun. It's so cool. So I have, from early on, my kids, we get them dressed up in a costume. Sometimes we'll buy the costume for them, or sometimes we'll make stuff we had around the house, depending on their age, of course. But as they get older, we try to make it more elaborate and cooler and fun. I get them in the car. I drive them. I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm going to take time in my schedule. I'm going to drive you to the best neighborhoods. I don't know about you guys, but I always look for the best neighborhoods, the full-size candy bars, right? So I take them to the best neighborhoods. I walk around with them from door to door. And then as they get filled up, I'm like, okay, that's the night. We get in the car and head back home. And if you're like us, when we get home, what happens? Time to evaluate what we got. It all pours down on the floor. I mean, so each kid's got their pile, looking at what they've got, and they start sorting it out. Chocolate over here, sweet, sour, all these different things. And, I don't like these. Who wants these? Different things like that. And there's always a moment where, as the dad, I didn't go trick-or-treating with them, but I'm looking and I'm like, oh, he's got a Kit Kat. I love Kit Kats. So I'm just kind of looking, and they're like going back and forth. Look what I got. And they're piling their stuff. And then I'll ask at some point, hey, do you think I could have one of your Kit Kats? Now, all my kids love Kit Kats too. It carries on, I guess. And so it's not like it's I don't like it. That's like and they'll give me that look like, you're asking me for one of my candies? And I could see in their minds are thinking, Dad, you could have gone door to door too. I mean, you were there with us. Why didn't you ask for your own candy? They don't say it out loud, but I can see their brains are turning and they're hesitating on answering me. And I'm like, just one. And I got to be honest, in that moment, like when I first experienced my kids' hesitation, or one of them would say to me, well, get your own. I'm thinking to myself, get my own? Okay, look, you wouldn't have that candy if I didn't buy you the costume, if I didn't put you in my car and drive you to that neighborhood. I let you walk around and got you back home. It's because of me you have it all. That's how I felt. And I may have said it once or twice, but I try not to say it too much. But you know what hit me? What I realized the revelation moment was, oh my gosh, this is how it is between me and God. God doesn't need my money. God's not like going, oh, please, could I just have $1? Don't know how heaven's going to make a budget this month. It's not. God's given us everything. And God doesn't get angry with us. God doesn't say, oh, really? You're having a hard time giving me $1? You wouldn't have anything if I didn't. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is how it is for God. I can understand as a parent that I know that I don't need that chocolate because there's no other way I could do it. I could afford to go buy 100 candy bars if I wanted to. I mean, come on. If I want to, I could buy a whole pack. So it wasn't that I asked my child for that chocolate because I'm in dire need or don't know how else I'm going to do it. I want my child to learn generosity. God wants us to learn generosity, what it is to give away from ourselves. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 says this, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust their money. Wisdom here, which is so unreliable. If you play the stock market, you know what that means. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. So you can relax, because God does want you to enjoy some things in life. Relax. Tell my child, relax. I want you to have that whole pile of candy, but I want you to learn generosity too. Because God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment, but our trust should be in God. Because let's be honest, My kid has to trust me that by giving one away, they'll still have enough for themselves. That's the tension they're feeling in that moment. If I start giving all my candy away, I won't have any left. You know, that's in their little mind, that's what they're thinking. That's the panic that sets in was, well, if dad asked me once, dad could ask me twice. What if dad asked me 3 times? What if dad wants more? Will I have enough candy to last for myself? And we can feel this way as adults. God, I want to make sure I've got enough to last for my family, what I'm doing. But if I trust you, it could come back. And I'm so careful when I teach on this because I don't want to give the misrepresentation. I don't want to give you a false idea, a false hope in the fact that the reason you get is because you give. It's not like a lottery machine, or it's not like God's got a system and do this to get wealth. In other words, if you want to be richer than rich, just keep giving. This is the plan. If I do that, I'm no longer leading a church. I'm leading a multi-level marketing scheme. That's not what God's about. That's not what Jesus is trying to say. Because there is no plan. There is no formula to follow to get wealthy and get rich and get more enjoyment by giving. That's not what it is. It's about this word right here, trust. It's about trusting. When we trust, here's what I know, and this is true. I never go without whenever I trust God. I never go without. When I know that our money's a little bit tight, and I know that, okay, I've got some money right here that I could work with. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, so if something goes wrong next month, it could put me in a place where I'm not sure what we'll do. But whenever I trust God and say, I really feel like I'm supposed to give this to help somebody, when I do that, next month comes and I'm fine. Next month comes, I've even had this happen, where money came from an unexpected source that just, I was like, where'd that come from? I don't normally get that. And it's those moments where I realize, oh my gosh, when I trust God in my finances, it works out every single time. It just does. But it requires that trust. And there's always that awkward part of trust where you're taking that first step and it's like, oh, I'm trusting you, God, but this is scary because, I don't know. It's scary. But you know that God's got a plan and he can be trusted because he's given us everything. So now that you know this verse here, and I want you to see the verse that comes right after this one. So let's look at this verse now. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need. Always be ready to share with others. This is the verse we start off with. This is where we get the idea of be rich. But it's important to know before that, here's what he said. Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud, not to trust their money, which is so unreliable. And when they say trust your money, it's like not to trust that it's always going to just come from the employer, not to trust that it's always just going to come in that whatever that tax return, or it's not always just going to come because it's this source or that source. When God is your source, trust God. We'll always have all we need, and we'll even have enjoyment as well. Crazy to imagine that. That's God's plan. And a part of Give, Serve, Love is this annual giving that we do every year. This is the one time a year that we do it where we say, what if we did this? What if we all gave $39.95 per person? It's never changed, it's the same number. But what if we gave about $40 a person, all of us, man, woman, child, in our church? Those numbers will allow us to give thousands to charitable organizations in our community, to people who are in need, individuals. We've helped single moms, we've helped families, we've helped organizations. But when we have the ability to work with the funds like this and 100% of it goes away to help others, what could be done? And it's exciting to see what God does every single year with it. It's organizations that are doing a great job, who have got the reputations. We do the research on them, that they are trustworthy, they're reputable, and they're making a difference, and they're good at what they do. Rescue Ministries of Saginaw is one of them. They're one of our benefactors. And the last thing I want to finish off with today is a testimony from another life that was impacted. You heard Nate live right here talking to us last week. If you missed that, go back and watch it online. It's online to see. But this week we're going to hear from a guy named John McGee. Let's listen to what John's life has been impacted.
This is the story of John McGee, a man whose life was changed through your generosity and care.
I'm from South Georgia. I'm 58 years old. I was raised in a good, upstanding home. My parents were not drinkers and partiers and druggies. Work and take care of the family they were building. Prior to 15, actually, at around 12, I had had my first taste of alcohol, a beer, and had started smoking marijuana. Drugs and alcohol has been what caused my fall throughout life, you know, all of my negative parts, leaving God actually first. Alcohol was my demon. That's what took me down in the end here.
And so, with life spiraling out of control, John needed help. He needed a place to stay, and he needed to get his life turned around. And that's when he came to Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan.
And the great thing that I loved about it from the get-go was that it's a group of Christian people. It's spiritually based. And I needed that. Mom and Dad always told me anything worth doing is worth doing right. And anything worth doing and doing right is worth doing and doing right the first time, and there shouldn't nobody have to come behind you to fix it. Sorry, I'm still thinking about parents here for a minute. I wish they could see me now. Because all they ever knew from 18 to 20 years old and up was a drinker. I mean, I was functional. I worked, you know, but I was a family drinker.
But after years of struggling with the lure of alcohol, with a debilitating back injury, with unemployment, and all of those uncertainties that make life so challenging, John had had enough. He knew it was time for change.
And I just knew that that kind of life was just not the way to go. I needed to go back home, like the prodigal son. And so I decided on that walk home that morning after the 5th time, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. And I walked home and I never looked back. And the only thing I can tell you is, for me, is when I made the choice and prayed and talked with God, that was it.
Throughout all of John's journey, one of the constants in his life, along with the unmatched, unending love of his Heavenly Father, has been the generosity, compassion, and care offered to him at Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan, a place where he's been able to come for healing and to put the pieces back together again.
It felt like home, like I'd been living here. Not only that, but at the same time, what a blessing. It's because of loving, caring people that donate money, property and furniture things, as well as the people that donate their time, because life on this earth is short. It's a lot shorter than you think it is. But people go out of their way to give time to help someone that has fell into a hardship. So there are still good people in the world. The world's not as bad as it looks to be. Yes, it is, but no, it's not. God's still very much, Jesus is still very much alive.
Today, John has the thrill and the blessing of putting his own key in his own front door of his own apartment. That apartment was furnished through your generosity by donating furniture to Impact Designs. John continues a connection to Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan, and he continues doing his best to live a life that is pleasing to the Lord as he continues moving in the right direction.
I come into my own place. I cook my own meals in my home that God and the people that have donated all this furniture gave me. And I want you to know what you do is a big help. And you're more of a help than you may think you are sometimes. Sometimes you may have thoughts of, why am I doing this? Or just stop. Don't give up.
makes a big difference when you can put a name to a gift, doesn't it? When you see a person's life that's impacted, how it makes a difference. When we give, we're actually refining our own heart and mind. It's that verse that we read where it's like a refresh and restore for those of you who understand computers and how they work. If you've got a device that's not working right, typically, well, unplug it, shut it off, and turn it back on. And that sometimes will help it to reset it. And when we give, this is what we're doing to our hearts, to ourselves, is generosity is our way to do a refresh, a reboot on ourselves before God. God wants us to be generous because it helps us to become more like him, but it helps us, it puts us back in the way that he designed us to be, a place of peace, a place where we feel fulfilled and we feel like I'm happy and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I know my purpose on this earth is not just for myself. I thought it was, but now I know. And it's so incredibly, incredibly rewarding to do that and be a part of that. So our goal as a church is for 100% participation. That if you've got a family of 10, then it's 10 times 40. If you've got a family of 2, it's 2 times 40. That is our goal. But we know some of us could do more. I mean, in your own heart, when you sit down and you pray about this, it's like, okay, Lord, what should I give? If I'm going to be rich in good deeds, what will I give from what I have? Because I know what that number should be for myself. And it may not be 40, it may be more. But I'm asking for it to be at least that much. I know that all of us can do at least that much or more. We can make a difference in our community. And I'm not a big pusher I'm not like talking to you a lot about, I want you to give money. But in this case, it's not for me, not for this church. It's not for this building, chairs. It's for outside. It's for community. And this is why it's so important and why I'm pushing on it so much. So that's all I've got to say. We've got a screen that comes up here to show you there's ways to give. If you want to give through PayPal, there's a QR code that you can scan with your camera to do it that way through PayPal. Or if you give, you can use envelopes that we have for either cash or a check. You could write the word give. If you give online with PayPal, make sure you put the word give with it so that we know that, okay, this money is supposed to go towards the Give, Serve, Love campaign. It's not just a tithe or a gift. But that's how we're going to do this. In a minute, I'm going to dismiss us, and we're going to have a lively song to walk out with because it's fitting to the moment. And so I want to leave us with that. Out front are sign-up sheets if you want to serve for the rescue ministries. There's the Give station where you can give, serve, love, and give. And let's be generous. Let's be the church. Let's be what God created us to be and give, serve, and love our community. Ready, set, go.